Hi, my name is Rayleigh Marvin, and the current economic financial issue that I've chosen to do my paper on is the North American Free Trade Agreement, also known as NAFTA. So, the North American Free Trade Agreement was preceded by a different agreement known as the US-Canada Free Trade Agreement. This agreement limited the tax and tariffs between the US and Canada on different types of goods imported and exported between the two countries. A few years later, Mexico decided that it wanted to be a part of this pact. So a new pact was formed called NAFTA, and it was signed and became effective on January 1st, 1994. This pact limits tariffs and barriers on trade between the countries of the United States, Mexico, and Canada. So NAFTA is the largest trade group in the world, and it directly affects 500 million residents in North America, and it indirectly affects the whole world. And the main goal of NAFTA was to increase trade among the three countries to stimulate the economic growth between the three countries. Since 1993, which was right before NAFTA was effective, trade between the three countries was at $290 billion. In 2016, which was about 23 years later, trade has increased to $1.1 trillion. This is almost 4 times as large in a 23-year span. The agreements reached in NAFTA were to reduce tariffs and custom duties, allow duty-free access to various manufactured goods, the security of intellectual property rights, and establishing rules for solving disputes among the three countries. So each country that's involved is affected in different ways. And the first country that I want to talk about is the United States. So if you go ask a group of people in the United States how they feel about NAFTA, you're likely to get split responses. So the first group I want to talk about are the supporters of NAFTA. The supporters of NAFTA take pride in the $127 billion annual yearly increase in gross domestic product for the United States. Many supporters also take pride in the fact that 14 million jobs depend on NAFTA, and 200 jobs are created annually due to NAFTA. And there have also been job losses, but the jobs that have been created pay 15 to 20% higher average salaries than the jobs that were lost. If you take a look at the graph that is in the top corner of the screen, this is a graph recording the dairy exports to Mexico since NAFTA has been signed. And as you can see, it's a really large increase. It's very dramatic increase since NAFTA was enacted. So that means that if the U.S. dairy exports are up, that means that the U.S. is creating more dairy products, so there are more jobs. There are also American opposers to NAFTA. Many opposers blame NAFTA for the loss of American jobs and the static wages that many Americans have experienced since NAFTA has been effective. After trade barriers and tariffs were lifted between the three countries, many American factories moved to Mexico to decrease production costs. Because of this, Americans were very fearful of losing their jobs. But a lot of American factories moved because they could pay Mexican workers lower wages, and the cost of goods was lower in Mexico. American factories that were still located in America knew that Americans were fearful of losing their jobs, and they used this as leverage. So if workers came to them and said, we're not receiving good benefits, we need higher wages, American companies could say, hey, we could just move our factories to Mexico and you won't even have a job at all. So you should be thankful that we're still here. And this made Americans not ask for better benefits and higher wages because they were scared of the factories moving and they needed jobs. Many credit NAFTA for the loss of 700 jobs due to company relocation. And if you look to the graph at the right, this study shows that the cost of direct labor is 70% higher in the United States than Mexico. So this is big cost savings for factories. Also, opposers of NAFTA are not impressed with the $127 billion annual GDP increase. When that study was done by the University of Pennsylvania, the United States only had a population of 320 million people. So if you divide that out, do the math, that's only about $400 payoff per person. So similarly to the United States, many Mexican people have different views on NAFTA. The largest effects of NAFTA on Mexico were to the automotive and agricultural industry. Many credit NAFTA for the 500,000 jobs created in manufacturing, and many of these were in the automotive industry. Many full-scale assembly plants moved to Mexico and brought advanced technology with them. So the factories that were being lost in America and affecting the American economy in a negative way were increasing the Mexican economy because these factories were moving there. From 1990 to 2016, which was about a 16-year span, Mexico saw an increase of 13% for vehicle production. If you look to this chart to the right, this shows this was conducted in 2018. Or 2017, sorry, and this shows the different wages that are paid for workers in the automotive industry. So for the United States, the average worker is paid about $22 an hour. In Canada, they're paid about $19 an hour. And in Mexico, they're only paid about $3 an hour. These margins are huge, and Mexican workers are not being paid accurately for the work that they are doing. So there are also opposers to NAFTA in Mexico. These opposers are they don't like NAFTA because of the effects that it had on the agricultural industry. So NAFTA eliminated tariffs on agricultural products traded between the three countries. So the U.S. began to sell their cheaper products to the Mexican people, and Mexican farmers could not keep up. They couldn't sell these products at these cheaper prices. So Mexican farms had to shut down, and many of these Mexican workers retreated to the U.S. to work on the farms in America, and they often retreated illegally. If you look at the chart to the left, this is a chart of the U.S. corn exports to Mexico. In 1995, a year after NAFTA was effective, about $500 million worth of corn was exported to Mexico. In 2015, which was 20 short years later, about $2.5 billion of corn was exported to Mexico. This put many Mexican farmers out of work. So also, the Canadian people have split views on NAFTA. Since its implementation, there's been an increase of 165% in U.S. imports to Canada, and there's been an increase of 150% in Canada exports to the other two countries. The automotive industry has been negatively affected. Many factories have shut down, and the number of jobs has decreased from 52,000 jobs to 23,000 jobs since 1993. Canada, though, has experienced tremendous gains in investments. The U.S. and Mexico investments have tripled since 1993, and U.S. investment grew $298 billion from 1993 to 2013. But many people oppose NAFTA, so they want it to be renegotiated. And our president, Donald Trump, when he was campaigning for presidency, he used this as one of his as one of the things that he was going to do once he became president. He said that he was going to renegotiate NAFTA, and that he has done. He implemented tariffs on steel and aluminum products as leverage for the other two countries. And he also said if we can't reach agreements, then he's going to put tariffs on the automotive industry. But luckily, the three countries reached an agreement. The goals of Trump's NAFTA are higher standards in automotive industry, an increase in U.S. access to Canada's dairy market, better labor protections, dispute resolution form, and updated rules for intellectual property and digital commerce. The new pact was signed on November 30th, 2018, so last Friday it was signed, and the new name given is the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, also known as USMCA. So this new pact gives America increased access to Canada's dairy market, and also it affects the automotive industry. So vehicles must be manufactured with at least 75% of material from the three countries to be imported into the United States. And also this pact is requiring that at least 40% of each vehicle is made in factories that pay employees at least $16 an hour. $16 an hour. If you remember that chart from before, Mexican workers are getting paid on average $3 an hour. So this is a huge increase for Mexican workers. Here's a picture of the three leaders of the members of NAFTA. On the right is the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. In the middle is our President, Donald Trump. And on the left is Enrique Nieto, which is the President of Mexico. So all three of the leaders signed this pact, but it still has to be approved by legislation of the three countries. So my perspective on NAFTA is that it is a genius idea. I mean, stimulating economic growth by improving trade between the three countries. Great idea, but it was poorly executed. So the main group of people that were affected by NAFTA negatively was the average worker of each country, which is me and you. So many residents were affected by having lower wages. They lost their jobs and they didn't trust their employers or the government. Also, the issue of illegal Mexican immigrants because of farms closing down in Mexico. Many politicians, including Trump, are trying to build a wall and get illegal immigrants out. But I think that we caused some of the issue, so we should be held responsible for that. No one can argue that NAFTA has been has positively affected the economy. So I think that is a positive thing for NAFTA, but I think renegotiation is required, and I hope that it gets passed through the legislation of the three countries. Thank you for listening today. It's been a great semester. I hope you have a great Christmas. Thank you.